Welcome to our Meet the Experts Composers panel. We have 6 Emmy-nominated composers here today. Brian Tyler from 1883, Thomas Mizer and Curtis Moore from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Siddhartha Khosla from Only Murders in the Building, Christopher Willis from Schmigadoon, and Theodore Shapiro from Severance. Thank you all for being here. I would love to know, what was the first piece of music each of you ever wrote? Let's start with Brian.
Oh my God, put me on the spot. I think the first, well, I guess that's one of those things, it's like a transitional species. You're not sure when it goes from noise to music. But the thing I really remember actually becoming something that I would play was I'd read novels, like science fiction novels and things, and then I would kind of do my own sort of quasi score to it by writing melodies and themes, and it was for the Frank Herbert book, Dune Messiah and Children of Dune, those two combined. That's really where I felt I wrote like a full piece that really that made, kind of musical sense. I mean, strangeness so much so that when I finally ended up scoring Children of Dune for Disney, I ended up, because I had written a melody that way long when I was a child, to those books, I ended up making a nod to my kind of former dreamer self looking forward, and it's actually in the real score. So that's one that definitely I'll always remember because of that connection that ended up happening.
It's full circle. There you go. So.
Yeah.
Sid, how about you?
Are you asking what the first piece of music we ever wrote was, or for?
Yeah, do you remember? Can you think of it?
Yeah, it was probably one of the shittiest things I've ever written. It was it was horrible.
Yeah, it's like, what point does it be like, I kind of like, there was an edge, I wasn't sure where. I mean, clearly the first thing is like 2 fists on the piano going gang gang, so I'm not sure if that counts though, but maybe.
John, no, I think it was like, I don't know. I mean, I had a band in high school. We were called the Hip Hop Hindus, and
it's alliteration.
And like me and my best friend would just get together and just like write stuff. And I remember pulling out my flute and running it through like reverb, and it was like we thought it was really cool at the time, but I guarantee you it was not.
Like Tim Weisberg.
Can you find it? Is it on YouTube?
I hope not. There's no way.
I'll just find this or re-record them and upload this after this, so everyone can go check them out.
All these pieces can be the soundtrack to this.
Yeah.
I have to say, when you said this, I'm more of the lyricist of the two, so I feel a little like the Bachelorette with a bunch of bachelors. It's like all these composers, and who wants to connect with the one lyricist in the room? But sorry,
hand out the roses. So.
Exactly. Sorry, Curtis. So for me, it was like, when did I first? It was always parody lyrics first in college. It was taking songs I loved and rewriting the lyrics, usually in rude ways. But that was where just discovering those skills of rhyming and play and stuff, and then I wrote songs with Curtis. Like the first songs I wrote really were with Curtis in college.
That's cool.
Last year.
Curtis, what about you? What's the first song you wrote without Tom?
Oh, I mean, I had my dad was so great that he got me like an Atari 400. I was like using computers from 1981, so I was really into like electronic music then. But hilariously, the first time I really started to write was with my neighbor had one of those cassette 4-tracks, and like a Tascam, and I remember just trying to push the limits of that. And I would write all these crazy like theme songs to talk shows that I would then host myself on, tape recorder. This says so much about me psychologically, but so I would write my own theme songs with multiple harmonies, and I'd like mix them down till I had like 40 tracks, that I'd done on this like 4-track. So those are the first, and I still probably have those cassettes somewhere. God
You
help us
can
all.
submit them for future talk shows, and new talk shows, upcoming talk shows, and see. If
Well, I might use Brian's technique, and maybe Tom, we should use those to like as our inspiration for the next songs we have to write.
It works.
Theodore, what about you?
So yeah, probably when I was like 10 or 11, I think I wrote my first composition, and it was terrible. I mean, I can tell you now, and it was like an A section and a B section, and I just repeated them over and over again, like, higher, lower, etc. My mom thought, it was genius and took me to a composition teacher, and I played about 30 seconds of it, and he was like, okay, I think I get the picture. Like, I got it. So that was that. And then my mom was like, I didn't like that composition teacher very much. So that was it.
Your mom, your first fan, always.
Yes. No,
Yeah.
very encouraging.
Chris, how about you?
I was going to say something very similar to Tom, which is that it sort of it's like the beginning of making things is sort of indistinguishable from just kind of nicking stuff and changing it slightly. Yeah. So it's all, I have all these memories of getting completely besotted with like the Heart and Soul progression, or the like Pachelbel's Canon progression. Like playing Pachelbel's Canon over and over and over for hours and hours, and annoying everyone with it. And then just gradually, eventually you've changed enough things that you're sort of like, hey everyone, I made this thing. Or I remember my my granddad showing me how to play the start of Lean on Me. And then I, could sort of steal individual chords from it. But I suppose that leads to the first thing that I really did. This is interesting. I didn't write anything down. My brother was doing a thing at school, like a review at school. They wanted to do a thing that was like kind of like 1929 at school. So they're doing all these sort of Depression era skits. And they didn't really have time or the resources to do the music properly. So me, his younger brother, just came, and I did my 4 chord progressions that I'd learned by then over and over for the whole thing. My little A minor thing that I could do, and my little like heart. It must have been so annoying and bad.
The younger brother coming in and stealing the thunder. So, well, earlier, Tom and Curtis, you guys were talking about how the Harry Belafonte song finally clicked for you when Amy Sherman-Palladino said it's a toast, not one of his pop hits. So can each of you name an instance at any point in your careers where something like that happened, like you got a note about something, or just, I don't know, or something happened where everything just unlocked for you and you knew this was the road you had to go down? We can start with Tom and Curtis again, not the Harry Belafonte song.
I was going to jump in. Tom and I are, we come from the theater world. That's like something, and we are still in the theater world. We're doing some fun stuff that is in production or will be soon. And I think one of the things that we get the option of doing that's so different from working in TV and film is that we get to, we worked so long on a piece of music or song for a long period of time, but then we get to present it in front of an audience at a preview. And a lot of times, we'll work on something, and usually if something's really hard, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but if something's really difficult or really hard, it usually is because we're going at it the wrong angle, like we're writing the wrong song, or we're writing the wrong moment for a song, or so there's something not right about it. But then the minute you put it in front of an audience, like they will tell you right away if something is working or not working. I love sitting in an audience of theater, and I watch the audience, not the show. And you just sit them, they'll sit forward, they'll sit back, they just very, very clearly tell you if they're not interested or if they really are interested. And I think those are those moments that for me are really enlightening, and I wish we could do more of that when we're working in TV and film. Sometimes you have no idea if it's going to work or not until it's way past that point.
Yeah, because it's kind of like a sitcom taping, right? You see what Joe lands with an audience.
A little bit for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Tom, do you have anything to add?
No, I just, that's exactly the way it is. It's something I miss terribly, is just that moment of, it's terrifying the first time you have an audience watching a musical that you've written, but we often pick seats purposely that we can't really watch the play, we want to watch the audience. We'll sit in a certain place so we can just sit and kind of watch where things are happening. And you just know something in your heart click, you go, I knew it, as they just check out of a song at a certain moment that you knew it wasn't quite right.
Yeah, and you think to yourself like, oh no, that I should have known. I totally knew that the whole time. Like, I'm not sure if I totally knew that, but I'm gonna pretend like I did the whole time. And it just clarified what my initial instinct was.
You sort of get some of that even in a meeting, don't you? In a Hollywood context. And that's so strange because you kind of been living with something on your own for an enormous length of time. And as soon as you hit the space bar in the meeting, you just know.
Right.
This is
what am I doing?
I said the most curious effect.
Did that happen to you recently?
Oh, well, the sad thing is, of course, we've been doing things remotely, so you don't quite get that same electricity. But I do love that process. And it's funny, you can have the opposite. You can have sometimes on TV shows where you know, the schedule is getting very, very quick. And you're way into sort of season 2 or whatever. I would start getting familiar enough with the showrunner that the end of the episode is sometimes not finished. You know, it's like it turns into a piano map, and then I start singing along and singing the drums. But if the idea is okay, normally the pitch goes fine like that. I'm sort of like, and now trombones, and now and I can feel that it's actually he's fine with it. You know, it's not a problem. But there might be some other bit that I thought was that I worked on so much, but I just know as soon as it happens in the room that
it's almost like sometimes, it's that, like you guys are saying, it's so true. The audience factor. I'll tell you when it most happens with me is when I go to on a film, especially if I go to conduct the orchestra, and sometimes if you overwrite for the orchestra, once you have 90 people or 60 or whatever it might be playing it, all of a sudden it overwhelms the picture or something. I remember doing a William Friedkin movie and it was like this action sequence, and it was like, whoa, hold on, it's like a hat on a hat. Once I heard the orchestra, it's like, oh my God, what did I write? It's this giganto, like requiem for it. So like went back to kind of almost like brought it down to adagio. It's kind of, mezzo piano, just letting them kind of these longer chords. I rewrote it over lunch frantically, by hand, it scribbles everywhere. And then you conduct it and they watch you and they imbue it with that humanity, and it just comes alive. Whereas sometimes when you're doing a mock-up, you're writing in your head, it's just, it doesn't happen the way it ends up being. And that's part of the beauty of kind of that error bar that is humanity, that makes it much more beautiful at the end of the day. And they give so much more back. So that's what I find. I end up attenuating once I hear it live.
Theodore, what about you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I just think that until you watch your work with somebody else in the room, you can't see it through an audience's eyes until somebody's sitting there in the room with you. And then suddenly you're not watching it through your own eyes, you're watching it through that other person's eyes, and you can see what it is. And that can be just totally horrifying, because you can think you've written this great cue and then you realize it's all wrong. Or you can feel like, oh man, I've got this score nailed, and then you go to a preview screening, and just like the minute the movie starts, you're like, this is not what I want it to be, or this cue is really not pulling its weight, or it's trying way too hard, and there's just sometimes no way to know until you can kind of see it through somebody else's eyes.
And sometimes it's the opposite too, right? You think it's not going to work, but then it's a hit. It goes
absolutely. Like, it's not always thinking that you're great and then being disappointed. Like sometimes you feel like you've just like tossed something off, and there's nothing there. And then you realize, like, when you see it with an audience, you're like, oh, actually that's like perfectly simple. And it's good because I didn't think
it's like that section in your piece, and then that's
totally, which by the way, which was completely tossed off. Like it was the B section. It was like the part where I was like, oh, okay, I'll just do a thing here. And then that became that became the score of the series.
Sid, how about you?
I don't know. For me, it's there's I just keep on going back to just that collaboration and just really understanding the showrunners and who they are and why people are on the screen and doing and saying the things they're saying. I think for me, that's always that takes some time. On Only Murders, it definitely took some time in the very beginning. I had to understand who John Hoffman was a little bit and understand like his spirit a little bit. And I think once I started getting a sense of who he was, and that's like the thing too, that like, I wish we could do more of. Like, I wish we could spend more time. And I don't know what everyone else feels here. Like, I get very limited time with everybody that really is with the people who are actually making the decisions. And so I oftentimes have just like a couple moments, to like get it right. Like we're not at the point where I can audition and try things forever and ever and ever again. And we have a very limited amount of time. And so for me, the realizations happen like when I unlock something, it's often after I've had a conversation with John on a story that's something that might have happened to him, in childhood, or something that may have happened to him recently that inspired why this person was here. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get him now. And now that can inspire me to like use the auto harp instead of like a piano chord or something like that. Those like minor things make those differences for me. And sometimes I'm fortunate enough, like John and I just had a conversation the other day to talk about season 3 of Murders. And like we just had we got a Zoom, and I was like, I'm just gonna have a drink. He's like, cool. And we drank and talked. And after that, like I could hear season 3, and it was only because we talked. So that's it. Just communication and that collaboration, I think, is key.
I think you're right. Then we need more time. So what we should do is we should all be our own showrunners, write the show ourselves,
Right.
and we can all write the music. We have plenty of time.
Yeah, you give yourself your own notes. There you go.
But then we would have double the work.
It's coming from someone that directs. Like, no, it doesn't end up happening that way.
I know.
Serving more. There's a whole other pyramid of time destruction.
Well, I wish I could spend more time with all of you guys, but we have to wrap. But thank you so much for your time here. It's great speaking with all of you, and congratulations again, and good luck at the Emmys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You
Good
guys.
luck, everybody.
Nice
Thank you so
meeting
much.
everyone.
Great seeing you
Great to
all.
see everybody.
See y'all.
Big fan of you all. All right, we'll talk soon.
Bye.
See you soon.